Per. Okay, and let us admit all, and they'll start joining. And then I'll just make sure folks are on mute. That'll be great. Okay, here we go. Very good, very good. Welcome everyone, and please come on camera. And if you can go on mute, that would be wonderful. And welcome everybody to this episode of Beit Abulafia with Avraham Leader and hosted by Shoshana Sanker. I'm Jason Kaplan, and to start our program, I'll let Shoshana welcome us, and then we'll introduce our guests and begin the conversation.
Thank you, Jason, and Shavua Tov, and good morning to everyone. This is a fantastic way, I think, to start our week. We are honored to have Avraham Leader on with us today, who is going to share some incredible ideas and thoughts with all of his studyings from Abulafia. So welcome, good morning, everyone, to Beit Abulafia. Jason, I want to start off a little bit with you telling us how you and Avraham connected and how he was able to join us on this program.
Oh, sure. Okay, welcome everybody. Give me one moment. Okay. I
Letting
have
people
my
in.
phone on mute, but I don't have my kid's phone on mute. Okay. There's always some bit of comedy to start off. Welcome everybody, and I'm just so happy to bring Avram Leader on. I've been in touch with him for a couple of years, going through my journey to Abulafia and then finding the subject matter experts. As I'm talking, we are having a really good turnout for this program, so I'm just going to continue admitting
Let
folks
people
coming
in.
in. Yeah, and just making sure they're here at the beginning because we really are starting at 10:02.
So why don't we just say, Avram, welcome, and say hello to everybody for us while Jason lets everybody else in.
Okay, I'm very happy to be here. This is like when I heard there's Beit Abulafia in Memphis, Tennessee.
Right.
I was quite surprised.
Right. Sign you up. Join us.
Well,
Yes.
it's been amazing to me to find Memphis, Tennessee, and then to find the support of the Jewish community here for this program. And we had a wonderful relationship with the JCC of Memphis. We're developing one with the East Valley JCC of Rabbi Bayo in Phoenix. So it's really great to see all the interest here. I think you're going to hear a very unique story of an individual, Avraham, who started this many decades ago, probably as a singular person, uncovering Abulafia outside of the academic world. You're going to hear a wonderful story. Let me start by bringing up on my phone Avraham's
Yeah.
bio.
Yes,
And
please do.
yeah, and giving just a little bit of background, and then we'll go ahead and get into it. Um, Avraham Leader is an internationally acclaimed teacher of various schools of Kabbalah, a founder of Jerusalem's Leader Minyan, a chairman of the Wutzeg Sega Center for Culturally Adapted Psychotherapy. He has published primary Kabbalistic texts and founded the Matzref Academy for the study of Avraham Abulafia's teachings. His students include teachers, researchers, rabbis, and beginners. And with that, welcome everyone to the program and welcome you, Avram Leader. We're so happy to have you here. It's a tremendous bracha coming to us from Israel, as many of our guests are, and many of our guests here in America.
Awesome. Well,
So,
thank you both. Oh, go ahead, Avram. Take
no,
it.
no, you go ahead, Shoshana.
Well, no, this is what I was going to say. So, Jason, tell us about y'all's connection. And then after that, Avram, we really want you to give us some background about how you got to where you are today. I know it's a long journey and you're going to condense it, but give us some context after Jason tells us a little bit more about y'all's meeting.
Okay, great, great. And for those listening, we will have an actual meditation demonstration. So we're going to have conversation. So let's get right into it. Essentially, I really discovered, I would say Avraham Abulafia for many years. I was aware of him when I first became observant in the 90s. There was the Moshe Idel book that came out, but I read it, didn't really understand much of it. And we'll get in a little bit of how I made this connection between music and Abulafia. And that was around 2018. But anyway, so I started looking online for Abulafia experts, and I found Avram Leader. And we were in touch, and I said, I'd really love you to come on the program. And, you know, the world's been a little bit strange a couple of years, but we did finally get in touch, and we talked on Zoom, and it was just such an amazing conversation, and hearing his story and seeing how we have very similar worldviews and very different approaches, and we had to talk about it, and we got to look at it at different angles. It was a very Abulafia type of conversation, seeing everything from different angles. So I'm so pleased that today what's unique is we've had a lot of great top level jazz musicians come on our program. We've had different meditation teachers from Sikh and Native American Indian, Chickasaw. And now we're going to hear someone who studied the primary texts of Abulafia, a subject matter expert who can really help us delve straight into the primary texts and give us his views and his approach to teaching Abulafia. So with that, I'm so glad to make this connection today and hear more from Avraham Leader.
Yay, I think we all are. Avraham, give us some backstory. What's your origin superhero story?
Okay, I just want to, I see a few of my friends and students here, and I want them to know also that Jason is a great jazz musician. That's actually his connection. I hope he'll say something about that later on. So I was born in the United States of America, actually in Cheyenne, Wyoming in 1953. I grew up in a few places, including Los Angeles, California, where from age 12, I went to a yeshiva, okay? So we're talking about the 60s in the United States. And even though I was in this yeshiva in California, in Los Angeles, and we were supposed to be disconnected from the world around us, but, we couldn't help hearing, I couldn't help hearing about different things that were going on in the world at that time. Whether it be actually with us here is my chavruta, who was with me in this yeshiva, Rabbi Dr. Menachem Kalus. So we were there together, and we heard about Buddhism, and we heard about meditation, and we heard about psychedelic drugs. And this was all very interesting, often more interesting than the Talmud studies. And I was wondering about whether we had anything similar to this in the Jewish tradition. And I read Gershon Sholom's Major Trends in Jewish Mysticism, and I read his chapter on Abulafia, which I actually think to this day is one of the best short introductions to Abulafia, at least from an academic standpoint, but not only. And he said this man, Avraham Abulafia, who lived in the 13th century, had all sorts of, he was doing techniques similar to yoga, meditation, and he was seeking what we call altered states of consciousness. So I said, wow, I'd like to read this man, which I found impossible because there was really no books of his published at the time. So I came to Israel when I was 17, and I went to the Hebrew library and I copied, by hand, a couple of Abulafia's books. Okay. If I had had a little more sense, I would have realized that I could have had it photocopied, and I didn't have to actually copy it by hand, but I wasn't aware of that. Probably it was useful for me. I have to say it was probably, helped it make
a good exercise, yeah, to get it like ingrained in your brain when you're actually writing it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing was, so I would copy this, and then I would go out in a yard by the National Library and sit under a tree and try to read what I had written. And I have to say, I really couldn't understand hardly anything that I had copied. This man's language, Abulafia's language, totally not intelligible to me on any level almost. But, here and there was something sounded interesting. And I'll say in a moment something about why it's really difficult to read Abulafia. But just to go on, I continued. Eventually, Abulafia's books were published by someone here in Israel about, I'm not good with dates, but about 14 years ago. Most of what we have from Abulafia, he printed. So that made a huge difference for me because everything was much more accessible. There are not a small amount of mistakes in these books, but it's still something, it's a great thing that we have them. And I've been reading and rereading these books of Abulafia for the past, over 50 years. Now over 50 years. And thing is, not that I have such a long attention span, but the thing is that even if I live 120 more years, there's going to be stuff that fascinates me in Abulafia for beginners, because I have not deciphered every book. I'm going to be missing some things that I don't follow, that I don't understand yet. And then the next time it's like a revelation each time to discover something new in Abulafia's writings. So he has, as I said, my interest in Abulafia began because of wanting to see a sort of native Jewish meditation technique. And because of his interest in altered states of consciousness, which he called prophetic states of consciousness, he sees prophecy, what you know from the Bible, prophecy. So he sees that as an altered state of consciousness. And following in the steps of Maimonides, the Rambam, so he basically says, you know, it's something, it's human potential. Human beings are capable of achieving this state. And if you follow a certain path and do certain exercises, you can, and not only can, but should obtain prophecy. Because Abulafia says for him, being able to experience life and the world from this state of consciousness that he wants to bring us to, okay, for him, it's the only thing that really makes living worthwhile. He's not, you know, he's extreme, he's a bit radical, you know, but that's how he says it. Only if you can experience life this way, at least make the effort to do so, because then you're beginning to live rather than just being like a walking dead person. That's how he says it, you know?
Okay.
So.
Good. So I want to touch on something you just said a little bit later on about how we can apply all these learnings in our daily lives. But before we get there, if you don't mind, Avraham and Jason, I want to pull you in. So the two of y'all definitely study Beit Abulafia. It is one of your passions, but you come at it from very different approaches, and you're each pulling different aspects out of it to apply in your life and to share the teachings in other ways. So Jason, I want you to share a little bit about how you've pulled like this musical meditation permutation aspect. And then Avram, I want you to talk about, which I think is pretty rare, you really are into this direct text study, which I think is not super common. So talk about the difficulty with that after Jason shares with us.
Sure. So, I mean, you're hearing someone who's been from the 60s studying Abulafia, and I think this is
Yeah.
what makes our guest so incredible. And so my interest is that I had actually I have it here. I made these Abulafia cards. I had this, and it'll come into focus in a moment. I had this in front of me, and I was looking at it, and I just didn't understand what it was. And these are 4 Hebrew letters. It's sort of coming into focus. There you go.
Yeah, you can see it.
Okay. And I just had those in front of me one day, and then I had a jazz manual that said, well, like this, you should take 4 units, in this case, 4 music notes, and permutate them 24 different ways. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. So, you know, so I started taking out my guitar and I started playing, and I'll just do this real briefly. I started playing 4 notes 24 different ways. And then I would do it all across the guitar board. Then I would just let it kind of take over. You know, and those are only just sets of 4. And it's just amazing to me. So, and I've always been a big student of the Rambam. So here was a gentleman who said, a great Kabbalist who said, study the great Rambam and then start to take these permutations and feel that prophetic connection like Avram is saying. So I'm just going to keep my remarks brief to say that's what I know. I know that I love the Rambam, and I love that Abulafia showed me the permutation system. I've really begun to understand jazz in a way I never did before. What's been missing for me is an individual who has the primary text knowledge. I have an interesting approach to the framework, but the primary text knowledge, I think we can focus on that in the next part of this interview of understanding Avram's unique background and kind of extremely, almost I would say, historical calling to Abulafia back, 50, 60 years ago. So again, the framework has led me to understand music better than the permutation system, but I think now we'll go deeper into Avram, your understanding of his primary worldview and from the primary text.
Okay, that's an
A lot to
interest.
unpack.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm going to try to do it briefly. So I'm going to do it by explaining what the difficulty in reading Abulafian texts is. Abulafia thinks our given state of consciousness is quite limited. It's limited by, the conditions of our birth, where we are, everything. So as a result, Abulafia says we all have a very, very partial grasp of reality. Okay, God for Abulafia is all of reality. Havaya, the Hebrew name for God, being. Okay, being, Abulafia says, is reality. Havaya zu mitziut. So that is God. Okay, so Abulafia wants to take us from partial consciousness to consciousness of the all. Now, Abulafia's way is through language. Abulafia basically says that what makes us human beings the next step in evolution is the fact that we have the ability to develop language, to speak and develop, not only speak, to develop language. Okay, so Abulafia says that we experience language in 3 different dimensions. One is we speak in language, we write in language, and we think in language. So accordingly, Abulafia developed exercises in which he works, the basic building blocks is language, whether sound of language, or whether written language, or whether thought language. And he wants to basically do different things in order to deconstruct language into its basic building blocks, which are sound, which are shape. And here's where Jason prophetically, Abulafia would call this prophetically, understood that this was how his teaching is applied in music. And Abulafia, by the way, I'm not sure he wasn't a musician, because he compares his work with language to music in quite a few places. And I wonder if he didn't play something or another, but that's exactly where that comes in here. So getting back to reading the books, okay? So when you read the book of Abulafia, what happens is he's like explaining some idea, and this man, his mind is going like 1,000,000 miles an hour. He's like a genius, okay? So he's explaining a very complex idea, and then he'll stop at one word, okay? And then he'll let that word deconstruct according to certain writing exercises. He calls it seruf, permutation. He'll let the word deconstruct, okay? And then that might lead to some other words. And this process might go on for a few words, a few lines, or a few pages, okay? And then whenever he's done doing that, he gets back to his idea, but he gets back to idea after his consciousness has been expanded and altered by this process of how he deals with language. So, I mean, it sounds maybe nice, but if you're trying to understand what he's trying to say, very difficult.
It's almost like you have to learn how to do what he's doing with these altered states in order to fully understand what he's really trying to convey. It's like a chicken and an egg situation. You have to get there one way.
Not almost like, exactly.
Right. Okay. So, and Jason, what's interesting is that what Avram is saying really does apply to the musical aspects that you've taken out of it. They both are the same. They're just getting to different places, wouldn't you say?
I would. I think that's what's been so amazing talking to Avraham on our pre-call was I don't have the intellectual training or devotion to the study that he's done to articulate how I feel when the music's happening with me. And this is the uniqueness of our guest today, of Avraham really explaining it in real clear terms,
Yeah.
the writings and what's going on, things that I really would love to articulate, but I just say it starts happening when the permutations come in. So maybe Avraham, if you can tell us a little bit more about that experience of studying the primary text and what maybe anybody on this call could do with your advanced students or beginners or people just joining could do to access the texts, or steps that you have for that.
About the experience of learning the text, it's as I responded before to Shoshana, like the way these texts are written, you know, in order to understand them, your consciousness is going to have to change while reading them. And by the way, Abulafia, along with books, of theory and explaining exercises, he wrote prophetic books, what he calls books of his prophecy, and which are very, very interesting. And actually, there was something in the pre-talk that we had that I think Shoshana had mentioned that I want to relate to, if that's okay, which was how Abulafia relates to people's lives. So besides, if you're interested, in learning an authentic Jewish meditative process or practice, okay? So over the years, I realized that Abulafia is definitely, for me, one of the greatest teachers I have, if not the greatest for me personally, of how to live one's life. He has a very, very sophisticated system of how one looks at the fact that they are alive, how you relate to it, and how one can relate to their own personal makeup. This is not something it's not something that's really noticed about Abulafia, but it's very powerfully there because he believes this is part of prophesying. He doesn't think you can disconnect between the two. You have to go a very, very long path of what he calls chakirat atzmeinu, which means self-study, basically means self-study. And just to give you an example of one of what I think is his very interesting ideas. For example, when he looks at our personality structure, he says that we are made up of different malchuyot, different kingdoms, okay? We are made up of different kingdoms. Now, I could say we all have different personalities or characters within us, okay? But when you say kingdoms, when you call them kingdoms rather than different personalities, that means there might be a war going on here. In other words, there's vying for territory. And the way it works, the way the kingdoms within, I call them in English, the way they work is that, Abulafia says this, kol da'alim gavar, the one that's stronger at any given moment in the person's life takes over, and might take over for a few minutes or a few hours. That might be the nice Abraham kingdom. Okay, and then another one is growing there in the background, and then maybe the impatient Abraham kicks out the nice Abraham and takes over, and that goes on and on. And so Abulafia asks us to first of all identify these different kingdoms. In my courses, we do that and give them a name, give them names, and really spend time study. And then at a certain point, what Abulafia calls Hamelech HaChadash, the new king appears or becomes present. The new king is a organizing component for personality. The new king looks at all the kingdoms and puts them all in order. This one is like taking too much. This one doesn't have enough. The new king makes order. In fact, Abulafia, for him, this is the meaning of the Mashiach, of the Messiah. In a person's personality, this new king who becomes the person's I, okay, that is the Mashiach. That is the person's personal Mashiach, Messiah, because that is a messianic function. Of course, the reason that he's not doing it, this new king is not making order in the personality so that I can be healthy mentally. That's not his goal. I mean, yeah, that's nice, but he's doing it so that I'll be capable of experiencing prophecy. That's the reason, because only when I'm a unified, integrated being like this, and my kingdoms can live with each other, and then I have this new function, which is a higher consciousness that takes over or rules over them, I can go into that higher consciousness, which is the medium, that higher I of myself. That's the way I experience the divine consciousness, the consciousness of the all.
It's amazing. I love how a lot of times on this program about Beit Abulafia, Avram, we talk about how we have this universal outlook of what Abulafia is and was, but then we're able to break it down just like you've done on how it can apply to people in their daily lives. How would you advise people to get into these different kingdoms? What are some of the steps? I'm sure that's like a much longer answer than we have time for, but are there something that you would be able to give to people today to get them started on this journey for their own kingdom creation, and then this main king to organize everything for them?
Well, okay, so these are processes,
Right.
that people do.
Takes time.
I didn't mention before, but I didn't teach Abulafia for about 40 years of studying it, for the simple reason that I felt I didn't understand it well enough.
Wow.
I had a great teacher, my Rosh Yeshiva, the head of my yeshiva, who said, if you can't understand the pshat, the simple meaning of the text, you have no business teaching it to anyone. And I felt I didn't understand pshat well enough in Abulafia in order to teach it. But I did start, I figured, okay, maybe I don't understand everything, but probably know about a few things more than quite a few other people might know. So I might want to share that. To make it long story short, so I opened up what I call Matzref. which is the Academy for the Study of the Prophetic Teachers of Rabbi Avraham Abulafia. And I have like short courses, like an introductory courses, and I have a 2-year program for people who really want to deeply immerse themselves in Abulafia. And at the end of the program, I give them what I call haskama. You might have heard of hasmacha, which means ordination. I call this haskama, which is agreement. It's the same letters, but I've rearranged them. So it's
Smart.
agreement because Abulafia talks about haskama nevuit, which is prophetic agreement or prophetic one mind, I would say. Anyway, so that's really where one goes. You know, I might open up an English four-part course in the next month or two. I'll let you know if people would want to join.
Yeah,
You're all
please do.
most invited. But when, you know, what I can suggest just to try out is to sort of watch yourself and try to identify, I would say, 3 different kingdoms that take over different points during the day, during the week, whatever, and give them a name. Give them a name, okay? Give a kingdom these names and see, maybe try, I would say maybe take one of these kingdoms and try to notice over time when this kingdom tends to take the front stage in your life. And again, these kingdoms are not necessarily bad. They can be very good. And I would say maybe one last thing that it's suggesting to do, I can't go into this in depth, but see if you can find a place in the body where you identify as the location of this particular kingdom. Because they're they're related to different places in the body. Again, I can't go into it in depth right now, but that's how it is. And I was very, like, I had in my 2-year group this year, 2 people had a very similar kingdom came up. And the amazing thing was, you know, I asked them, okay, so could you locate it on the body? And they both found it here, like in the back, like sort of at the base of the neck. It was amazing, like independently, just trying to sense that out. They came up with similar place.
That is awesome. It's all of this is reminding me a lot about how these days mental health awareness has increased. And I think this is all part of it too, just really getting in tune with your thoughts and your body and connecting it all together so that way we can, you know, have this direction to lead healthier lives, which I think is fantastic.
Absolutely.
Before we hop into a meditation, which I know I'm super excited about, it's such a good way to start the week. I wanted Jason to hear your thoughts about where you think the future of Abulafia is going. And then also, Abraham, I want you to chime in too when Jason shares with us.
Okay, great, Shoshan. I mean, I just wanted to tag that with what Avram
Please.
was saying about some basic ways that I work with Abulafia, and I think it ties into what Avram is saying. It's just when I'm
Perfect.
walking, I think about permutations. I think about the legs moving and the hands moving or dancing around, you know, and just thinking about these permutations. I think the biggest thing I've learned from Avraham and from my own studies is that when people say higher consciousness, I mean, for me, I've always thought they meant some type of static higher consciousness with Abulafia, and it's given me a lot of comfort because this is what always happens to me in music or other times. My consciousness would keep shifting and shifting and shifting and shifting, and I thought, oh, I'm missing it, like I'm off the mark. And I think when you study Abraham Abulafia enough and you do meditate, and you're not keeping a certain state. I always thought you had to keep a higher consciousness, and it's just constantly shifting. It's great. It's great that the consciousness is constantly shifting and moving and permutating, and it's given me a lot of comfort that that's the way my mind works. And maybe it's a universal thing. I found a lot of comfort in that. So I think when our days shift, our mind shift, our lives shift, and you just what they call go with the flow, but it's just much more concrete technique to go with the flow that you understand what the flow is and you can work with it. So for me, the basic thing is music, but it could be walking, dancing, singing, exercise. I think what we're all going to learn, and I hope Avram can come back to us, is or we can study his classes, and we'll give people the website, is how to do it from the text and study his svarim, his books. So I think the future of Abulafia, just to conclude my thoughts here, the future of Abulafia, I think, is in art and literature and music. You can start seeing the permutations that underline all human creativity. And here's a rabbi who uniquely said, let me show you the patterns underneath it and then find your own path. I think being a Baal Tshuva, for me, and starting with Chabad and then modern Orthodox and Sephardic and Breslov, and I always thought, I like it, I can't commit. And Abulafia said to me, don't commit. What do you mean commit? You're going to probably change tomorrow. Why would you get involved with committing to something static? So I think the future of Abulafia and perhaps of religion and spirituality is it's always changing. You have to find your unique path almost every moment. So I think that's part of the future. And I think Avraham's 50 years of work and conscientiously and so thoughtfully saying, I'll teach when it's the right moment for me to teach is an example for all of us to, do what we know, but, publicly come out and teach these things after 40 years. I mean, that's a tremendous service to all of us, Avraham.
Agreed.
Okay, that's nice to see it. I never thought of it as a service, but that's nice. But that's amazing, Jason, what you said, because it's exactly, I look at the body of Abulafia's work, and I say, this man, he's not only way ahead of his time, I think he's ahead of our time still. But like I hear somebody describes a new field to me of one sort or another, and and I say, God, man, that is so that's so connected to Abulafia. And what Jason said here, art, music, literature, I am dying to see people from these different fields, but study Abulafia seriously, and then as Jason has done, and then begin to create in different ways. I want to see people who research the mind, who do scientific research on the mind, come up with stuff of Abulafia. Now, the amazing thing is that here and there, people all of a sudden have like this flash, like, wow, Avraham Abulafia, do they, the Dada movement, there was something connected to the Dada movement called the Letterists. It was some sort of artist. I won't get into that now. So their saint became Avraham Abulafia. What do they mean when they say Avraham Abulafia? They read, something about him, probably in the academic research, and they connect. But, they don't necessarily have in-depth knowledge, but they connect. And I would like very much, I would hope, I see it comes up, it was in this movie, it was in, what's his name, Umberto Eco's book. Abulafia comes up here and there, like people heard about him and say, wow, that was the man. But I would like to see, that, or I would hope that in the future that's going to like spark in a few more places. And then all of a sudden, this is like a lot of people are, but having said that, Abulafia is an elitist, his way himself. You have to make a lot of effort. You have to really, really, it's not like, learn it 5-10 minutes and you have something sweet. You really have to commit, and the man is demanding, very demanding.
Well, I think then the reward is even bigger, right? Like you put in the time and effort, you pay attention, you focus, it takes the time, and then at the end, it's all worth it.
Yeah, I can say for myself, every person has to, figure it out for themselves.
That's right.
Every moment I've invested in Abulafia is paid off. Absolutely.
It's amazing. It's so nice to enjoy the fruits of your labor, huh? Sorry, Jason.
Yeah, it's fruits of the labor, and I would just say on that last point, I just hope that in yeshivas and other Torah study centers, that there would be someone training Abulafia, and someone says, well, I'm this level of religion, or I'm not feeling close to Torah, and they would say, let's help you think about where you are totally. Don't think about in the Torah world or off the derech. We don't need to go down that too fork in the road kind of way. You're a very complex person. Let's help you think about your individual path. Whether you stay in the Torah world, hopefully God willing, you'll stay in the Torah world, or maybe if you go on a different path, let me help you give you tools on a personal journey. Because we do believe God is real, and we believe that you always be doing avodas Hashem, but we don't have to make it, yes, you're in, no, you're out. And it's too one or two. So I think what Avraham's teachings can do is, if people study more and take his challenge to really dive into Abulafia, the study is to teach it to other people that there's a very multi-layered level to humans and that path. And I think that's just an incredible, I said service, but I would even say gift to everyone to open these paths up and make spirituality and religion much more multi-layered.
Agreed. That's the perfect segue, Jason. Avraham, please, would you guide us in some meditation to start our day really well? Well, and for some of y'all to end your day really well.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to share, it's like a taste of a taste of a taste
Okay,
of what like an Abulafia meditation might include or will
great.
include. So I said before that Abulafia identifies language in speech and in writing and in thought. And in each of these categories, he takes the language and breaks it down to its basic building blocks. And if we're talking about speech, so that's going to be the sounds, we're going to go down to syllables rather than words. Sounds make up a word. So we're going to go back to the sounds that make up the word. Now, in order for a sound to be sounded, the Hebrew alphabet has letters and vowels. Vowels, the Hebrew word for vowel is tenuah. Tenuah means movement. So Abulafia says, great. So since we say the vowels with our mouths, it is in our head. So he developed a system of head movements for each different vowel, which we do during the soundings of the divine name, which is one of Abulafia's central meditations. So what I want to do with you is to share with you these five major vowels and how we move the head and sound the sound. So I want to show you how that's done, and then we're going to just do it a couple times. And I would highly recommend, if you get it, doing it at home. I might have I'll send maybe a short video that explains it if you don't catch it now. So let me show you, let me share with you now the five sounds, okay? So the first one is O, the cholam, O vowel. And the way we do it is for each sound, we start with our head between our shoulders, and we inhale and we make the sound on the exhalation. We do the sound on the exhalation. And as we do the cholam, we lift our heads up. Let me show you. I inhale, exhaling, and the sound ends with the end of my breath. And when I get to a point in my neck, that's, you don't want to hurt it. You get to where it's comfortable. You stop there, hold the breath, and come back to center. So that's the first one. Oh, let's do it together. We're going to do it 3 times together. Taking a breath in, inhalation. Exhale, and the head goes up. Oh. Again, inhalation. Oh. Last time, inhalation. Oh. The next one is the Hebrew kamatz. Just show it to you right here. Here it is, the kamatz, the So for the this is like the most complicated one. We do an inhalation, head goes to the right shoulder and then we begin to exhale. And we're on the exhalation, the head goes from right to left, back to center, and down. So that we're actually drawing the vowel with the movement of our head. So let's try it. Take an inhale, head to the right, to the left, back to center, down. Okay, let's do that a couple more times. Inhale, head to the right. One more time. Inhale, head to the right. Okay, we're ready for the third one, the tsera, the We say it now today, Maybe some of you in America said a. So however it is here in Israel, we call it like the sagor, and it's done this way. We inhale, head goes to the left, and just from left to right, touching those two dots of the tsera, of the S sound. So inhalation, head to the left, again, inhale, head to the left. Last time, inhale. And now, E. Where is it? Here it is, E. Okay, E, very simple. We inhale, and the head goes from center down to the chest. Okay, inhale, down to the chest. E. Again, inhale. E. Last time. E. And the last, most subtle movement, that of the shuruk, the U. Here it is, the U. So this one, we're actually, let me show you. I have to, no, but then you won't hear me in the Zoom. So I'll explain it in a moment. I'll explain it, then show it to you. The head from the center goes forward and backwards and back to center. It's the most subtle movement. Forward, let me show it to you from the side. I won't talk because you won't hear me because of the microphone, okay? Ooh. Okay, so let's try that now together. Inhale, forward and back. Ooh. Try to keep the head balanced as you do this. Inhale. Last time. Inhale. Okay, excellent. Now, what we're going to do is put all five together and do them twice, okay? And we're going to conclude with this. Now, if you don't remember the head movements, you can watch my head if that helps on the Zoom, I don't know. Or don't bother. If it confuses you, the head movements now, don't bother with them. Just do the sound. O, A, E, U. And the way we're going to do them, I'll put it on the screen. One moment. We're going to do, as I said, the first two lines here. We're going to open with 5 silent breaths. Then we're going to, on each breath, O, A, E, U. At the end of the line, we're going to do 2 silent breaths. And then again, O, A, E, U. And then we'll conclude with 5 silent breaths. Okay, that's very simple. Just if just follow my voice. With the Zoom, when my head moves, you don't always hear it so well. Don't worry. That's just this microphone. Okay, so what I'm going to ask now is that you become aware of yourself sitting in your chair. Try to sit upright with your feet on the ground. Upright but relaxed, not to get tense here. And try to find a point between your two shoulders where you feel your head is balanced. Abulafia recommends imagining as if there's another being facing you that is exactly your height, and use them as a ruler or measuring stick to find your own symmetry and balance of the head and the body before beginning. And Abulafia says before beginning this technique, this is just a taste of it, but when we're doing it, Abulafia recommends letting go of all personal biography, at least for this minute or two that we're going to be doing this. Forget your career, your family, your money affairs, your health, where you live, circumstances of your birth, etc., etc., etc. Just let go of it. Feel as if you gave it to someone you trust to take care of. You'll get it back. It'll be just fine when you're done. This is what Abulafia says. So let's do 5 silent breaths. And as we exhale each of these 5 silent breaths, so let go of whatever's running around in your thoughts, your robotic, mechanical thoughts. Try to just let them out with each exhalation. So 5 silent breaths. Inhale. Head back to center. Do silent breaths. Inhale. 5 silent breaths. And Abulafia says, place your left hand on your heart and your right hand over your left hand. May merit prevail over debit. May reality prevail over illusion. And when you're ready, open your eyes, come back to the space. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Jason and Shoshana and Beit Abulafia for this opportunity and for the amazing work you're doing in Memphis, Tennessee. One of those things that, I say, wow, you asked me the future of Abulafia, Memphis, Tennessee.
No, this is great. It surprises me every time, though it shouldn't, that just a few minutes of following Abulafia with these notes and this meditation can really recenter you. I mean, it was just a few minutes. I don't want people to have this misconception that they need to spend hours and hours. They're welcome to, but just that little bit to begin, I feel like I am energized and I can crush the day now. It's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we are honored to have you. Thank you so much, Avram. We appreciate it.
Really my pleasure, my honor.
Thank you. Jason, thank you for starting the whole thing and then making these incredible connections. We have a really exciting program also coming up just next week that you want to share with us, and then we'll say our thanks to everybody again and call it a day.
Yeah, well, to everybody on the call, thank you for joining. We have people here from all over Israel and America, and I want to thank my folks for joining, Martin and Judy. I want to thank especially Shoshana Sanker for moderating this for the past 2 years. We started with great saxophonist Dave Liebman, and you're just such a fantastic host, Shoshana. We cover so much ground because you're so focused and get the best of
Thank you.
everybody.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, and just an amazing partnership to have you host. Avram Leader, this we did the pre-call and I thought, oh, the program's gonna be great too, but this was way beyond my expectations. I already started hearing melodies in my head and thinking about how I'm gonna be incorporating this into my life and doing this before I do my music practice. You really given so much, and I hope that, with I think the record turnout we've had online, the replay will be of benefit to everybody. So our website is ulr1.com, the number one, ulr1.com. On that webpage, you can tap Beit Abulafia. We are the Bridge Institute. We're a 501c3. We're going to host more speakers, and we compensate speakers for their time and their expertise. So your support is always helpful to us, listeners. And on June 11th, we are hosting a unique musician activist, Daryl Davis. He is known on CNN and Steve Harvey and all these Joe Rogan shows for going to the Ku Klux Klan members as an African American and talking them out of these groups. He just uses the power of dialogue to talk them out of these groups and touches their humanity and pulls them out of hate groups. And then we'll have a Beit Abulafia music session, and then we're going to have Nachshon's Leap Play. So that's June 11th at Harris Hall, Memphis, Tennessee, at the University of Memphis at 2 p.m. And so that's coming up, and we have more guests coming up in the future. But to really focus on today's call, we heard from Avraham Leader, who for 50 years has been at the forefront of teaching Abulafia. I think the world's catching up to him and to Abulafia. And I think the most exciting thing is whether people quote Abulafia by name or maybe they say permutations, whatever it is. I think in my heart I know that there was a unique rabbi 800 years ago who saw the future. He really did. He saw the unique individual age that we live in, that people would need tools to explore their individuality once the group identities kind of maybe faded a little bit. And we have a very, very unique teacher on this call. So thank you everyone for joining. I would like to give final words to Avraham to conclude. And we just want to really deeply, it's a deep bracha, it's a tremendous bracha to have you. And I just wanted to turn the floor back over to you.
So I'm just going to conclude with one quote from Abulafia that I always use to promote like classes. Abulafia says, just unbelievable. Rabcha hu libcha ve'elohecha hu b'kirbecha. Your teacher is your heart, and your God is within you. Rabcha hu libcha ve'elohecha b'kirbecha. So ultimately, that's where your source of learning. You meet teachers on the way, they're people. They're good for when they're good. Ultimately, trust yourself.
Love
So
it.
beautiful.
Yes, those are great words for us all to have a wonderful week. This was wonderful. Avram, we are so grateful that you spent your time and shared all of your incredible knowledge with us. Thank you so much. It's such a blessing.
Thank you, and thank everyone who was here and everyone who's listening to this at their own convenience.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Shavua Tov.
Okay. Shalom, shalom.